Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Here to talk all things hockey are your hosts, Brad Crisco, Ryan Hanna, and Evan Lobsinger.
I have to say, I've never been more relieved about changing our schedule because we were originally supposed to record at 8:30 this morning. That was our agreed upon time coming into the weekend. And between daylight savings hitting me like a ton of bricks, I had no idea it was coming. And just everything that has happened in Red Wings hockey for the past 5 days, the caffeine to anger pipeline would have been like a 1-to-1 ratio this morning if we were at 8:30.
I'm not sure what the exact sequence of chemicals and events leads to heart attacks. I feel like one of us would have found it at 8:30 this morning.
Eventually that's what will happen. Like I'll burst a blood vessel in my head. You'll have a heart attack, and Evan will just be left here just kind of gazing at us for a while thinking, I'm going to have to figure out how to get this published. And I have no idea how we do that.
Thank God I can use Google.
Best of luck. Anyhow, it's the vibes that we talked about for the past couple of weeks. You know, we said that there was a risk that it could go away and anything could happen. It would be, devastating if it did, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. It does not make this any less stark. Like the whiplash is unbelievable right now.
When we were riding the highest of highs that week, we acknowledged the fact that there was still a chance the wagon could go off the rails and everything could just go to hell. I'm probably one of the more pessimistic Red Wings fans in general. I didn't think we'd be off that rail in a week and a half.
Yeah, 10 days. 10 days for everything to be erased.
Hasn't it been basically 14 days since the Patrick Kane, peak vibes?
Literally, exactly.
Yeah, it was 14 days ago. That was peak vibe territory.
It feels like a lifetime ago.
It may as well have been last season.
Folks, welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Here to talk to you about all things Detroit Red Wings hockey, everything that's happened in the past 14 days, the NHL Trade Deadline, what Steve Yzerman did and didn't do, and lots more. I am one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
And I'm Evan.
On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, we are going to bring you a balanced, measured, objective view of everything that's happened, starting with the Red Wings Trade Deadline. So we're going to start with that just to recap, Yzerman, Hockeytown, what he's done and what he didn't do. And then we'll jump into the 3 Red Wings games that have happened, leading to a current 5-game losing skid, Colorado, Arizona, and then Vegas. And then we'll get into the playoff race, what the implications are now. Is the sky falling? Has it fallen? What's up next? Is Detroit out of it? Could they still pull out of this? And then we'll get into the trade deadline from the rest of the league and lots more before overtime. Before all that, I want to let you know that this podcast is mainly supported through our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. If you want to join the Dub Club, it is a great time. You get to join the Patreon exclusive Discord community, which is a fantastic community through all of the highs and lows of the season. You're automatically entered into all of our giveaways. We are giving away 2 tickets to every Red Wings home game this season, the vast majority going directly to our Patreon supporters. Additionally, you get access to our Patreon exclusive bonus overtime episodes where us 3 let loose, have some fun, talk about all the rest of the questions that didn't get answered in the main overtime episode as well. We just, you probably get a little bit more candid PG-13 reactions from us on things that have happened. So that's a good time. So again, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast if you want to support the show. Trade deadline. Last episode in our trade deadline preview, we said the most likely outcome based on what the Red Wings need and what's actually left out there and the timeline by which Steve Yzerman has to operate, which was he wasn't in any rush to do this by last Friday. The most likely outcome was that Detroit didn't do much and it would be an altogether quiet deadline. And it's been a long time since we could expect that. And then that's actually what happened. And that's how it played out. Detroit made 2 moves, essentially. One of them was calling up Berggren, which was the offshoot of the first move, which was trading away Klim Kostin to the San Jose Sharks. In exchange, they received defenseman Radim Simek and a 2024 7th-round pick, which originally belongs to New Jersey. Semek was immediately sent down to the AHL to bury the cap. He is a really good asset, actually, for the Barracuda. So, Evan, you made the joke. The Griffins were buyers at the deadline more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
But that was essentially a move where Detroit was shedding cap for next season.
Yeah, this is a pure cap dump, which makes a lot of sense. The Red Wings are not in a good cap situation going into next year, and every dollar they can unload, the better. Semek expires this year, so whatever minimal dollar amount he carries will also be off the board. The only real interesting thing about this trade for me was the fact that Semek was in the return and was assigned to Grand Rapids. We've seen a million trades in the NHL in the cap era where a team will take back a contract just to balance the money because ownership or whatever, they want to go dollar in, dollar out as much as they can. Cap dynamics be damned. It even happened with Detroit years ago when they traded Brian Lashoff to Tampa Bay, but Tampa's like, okay, this is just a paper move. He can stay in Grand Rapids. We actually don't need him on our farm team. Just leave him there. They didn't do that with Semek, who is the captain of the Barracuda. And before last night's news, there was a small part of me that went, is this Edvinsson insurance?
Mm-hmm.
Are they planning on bringing Simon Edvinsson up and this guy will take his spot on the blue line and then the Griffins don't take a huge step backwards when they recall Edvinsson before Edvinsson got hurt last night, and we'll see what's happening there. But yeah, it was a cap dump. And there was one interesting part of it. Other than that, the Red Wings basically did exactly what I wanted them to do, short of unloading Justin Holl, but I don't think that was realistic.
So more on Kostin. In case folks forget, this is how that played out. Detroit got Kostin as a part of getting that bigger deal in getting Yamamoto from Edmonton. So they got Kostin's rights. They bought out Yamamoto. They immediately said no to him, and that cost them, averaging about $500,000 per season for this season and next season on that buyout. So minimal impact, but they did that to have the luxury of signing Klim Kostin to a 2-year, $2 million AAV contract. So the turnaround on that was immediately they thought, over the course of the season, I should say, this isn't working and we can't have $2 million for a guy who's not going to be in the lineup. That's just too much money. I think Yzerman said exactly that. And it's disappointing because, I had a lot of time for Klim Kostin at the start of the season. I liked the physical game he brought, and I thought, at points he could do some things offensively, but it petered off, and you kind of understood why Edmonton was willing to let him go, and the physical presence didn't really come through in the way that would, offset the liability that he would be with the puck on his stick or off his stick on the ice as you saw the season progress. It was like a flash in the pan, not a big one, but where you could see Kostin being a little bit of a favorite of fans, but it just didn't work out. And that's very obviously what the Red Wings thought too. Yzerman was like, well, this sucks because I signed him for 2 years and now we have to let him go. The good news is they don't have to go the route of a buyout, which is what he was the most likely buyout candidate this summer. It was almost guaranteed to happen.
Yeah, I think with all that being said, it is surprised that the Sharks were willing to play ball on this, but as much, like you said, as much as it sucks that Klim Kostin never really found his bearings in Detroit, I think making this move and getting his money off the book is beneficial for the Red Wings going forward.
So, yep, that's what Detroit did. And in Steve Yzerman's press availability after, he confirmed a lot of things in a reference to other moves that might have been made. Like Detroit was active all day. That's what we were hearing. That's what was being reported. They were really working on stuff all day. And I think the two things they were working on was one, like you said, Brad, offloading a contract. And I think Justin Holl was at the forefront of a lot of those conversations. And I think the price was too high. And two, they were looking for a forward, a depth forward or a kind of forward where they can add a little bit more stability and veteran experience. I don't think Rust was the guy necessarily. I think some other folks have suggested, a Nick Dowd type, for example, and that would be probably a little bit more of a fit. But ultimately what Yzerman said was, I like what we have in Grand Rapids more. Like we have really good players who have done really well in Grand Rapids that we have drafted or brought into the organization. And why would I give up, a second or a third pick or a high-end prospect for something that we have in the system? So at the end of the day, I chose not to pay that high price, even though he said, one or two, especially one of the conversations got really close, and ultimately he just made the decision to not do it.
Great. So why hasn't any of them been called up till this weekend, literally? And Berggren, hey, he's number one on that list of forwards in Grand Rapids who should be up, and he's finally up. And, you know, it's in the middle of a losing streak, so maybe it shakes up the dressing room a little bit. I don't know. Maybe, but this is such a weird one to me because they waited too long on Edvinsson, and now I don't know the severity of his injury, but that might be able to play. And then if not Berggren, who else? I don't know if Mazur's ready. I would like him up. I don't know if Kasper's ready. I could see him coming up. Do they go with a veteran like Zach Aston-Reese to bring up? He's not better than anybody that was on the market. And again, I was very anti-rental for the Red Wings this year because fringy playoff teams should not be buying at the deadline. I've always held that stance. And the only thing that might have swayed me the other way, and hence why I'm so confused about a lot of things over the past few weeks, is the market for depth forwards was unbelievably cheap.
Yeah, this is a buyer's deadline. It's a buyer's market.
Again, I am not in favor of rentals, but if the Red Wings had made the Tyler Toffoli deal, are you upset? A second and a third round pick for a first line forward? Great. Phenomenal. Jason Zucker went for a sixth.
That was weird. Like, I know the salary is different.
It was pure money, and contenders did not have $5 million in space, and the Coyotes were not willing to retain. You know who did have $5 million in space? The Red Wings. If you wanted a depth forward, Zucker was right there. Beat the offer by a fifth, and I think everybody's doing backflips because that's almost literally nothing. So maybe it wasn't the type of player he was looking for, although Jason Zucker does strike me exactly as an Yzerman type. I don't know. I'm fine that they did nothing, and I'm not sitting here with revisionist history going, oh my God, it was so cheap you had to have acquired someone. No, they're fine not doing it. Hell, they don't even look like a playoff team right now, so why bother? Yeah, if you're going to keep championing the Grand Rapids players, you've recalled one to actually play basically the whole year. At some point, shoot or get off the point.
Nice. Haven't heard that one before.
You haven't?
Is that like the kid-friendly version?
Yeah, I stole that one from Down Goes Brown. I've heard him use it before.
I agree. I'm okay. I think this is a positive outcome. It's not like fun. Like everyone's thinking, oh, we want some action. And yeah, like trade deadlines where your team makes a move. Like everyone wants to feel like how Vegas fans feel like right now. Of course. But this was, in context, one of the better outcomes because Detroit didn't go and overpay for something that they didn't need. I would have loved a couple of those guys that you mentioned. I thought those were the perfect examples of, well, you could have had that and had it there and it would have been relatively inexpensive. But I also think I've assigned a lot less value to draft picks now than we have in the past. But still, this is a good outcome because they shed some salary without needing to do a buyout. And the things that I think they still need to do can happen in the summer. You get rid of Justin Hall in the summer. You make whatever other moves you need to make in the summer. You know, a lot has to happen in the summer if this team is going to continue to improve. It is not going to be a linear progression without outside influence. And by outside influence, I mean Steve Yzerman moving players in and out of this organization and calling players up. I agree with you, Brad, in that I heard that and I was like, Edvinsson should have been up. The Berggren one, I can come to terms with because the offense has been firing. And I understand the way Berggren plays in the AHL and the NHL are a couple of different things. Calling him up now is great. But to me, it's the defense. Like the defense has been Detroit's bane all season. And even if Edvinsson was going to be a part of that as he was like learning and developing, I'm such a broken record saying this. At least he's learning and developing now. So next season he is substantially better because there's no point in icing guys who are part of the problem who really you're trying to get rid of in a perfect world. Like if you can push a button and get rid of 3 defensemen right now in the Red Wings, Yzerman would hit that thing 7,000 times like it was cookie clicker. But that's the thing with me and Edvinsson. I just don't understand why he wasn't up earlier. Yes, he's had a lot of positive progression. Even after we said, you know, what's left for him there, he has cleaned up the finer parts of his game. The NHL is not a development league. The NHL is a development league. I don't know. For defensemen, I think it's a different story. So that's the one for me that I'm hung up on. But all in all, if you're walking away from the trade deadline and we're still talking about AHL and it wasn't a bad day for the Red Wings, I'll say. I have a lot of gripes with the Red Wings over the past 14 days, and the trade deadline's not really one of them for me.
No, this is what I wanted the trade deadline to be. My problems with the Grand Rapids stuff predate the trade deadline. I understand when they were in the middle of that streak, you probably don't want to pull someone from that. But that streak ended, a week and a half ago? Coincidentally, right when the Red Wings' new streak started. But I digress. But even if Edvinsson's hurt, and he's hurt for a while, you can't tell me. And I know we've used this in the past for like dramatic over-exaggerations to like prove a point. But you cannot tell me Albert Johansson is worse than some of the games that Petrie and a couple of the other defense have been parading out there.
No, absolutely not.
You can't. Like if I'm at the point with this, I don't even care. I do, but I'm not even saying it's because I care about staggering the rookies so that you're not throwing 5 of them in the lineup next year, or that you're, over ripening a prospect for 3 years. I genuinely think you have a better chance to make the playoffs with Edvinsson or Johansson in the lineup every night at this point. Their D is so bad once you get past, for the last 2 weeks, Seider, that any of these Griffins could come up and do at least as good of a job.
And Seider had some rough nights the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. As they could do as good of a job as what Petrie and some nights Sherratt, and even lately some nights Walman and Mata. You're giving yourself a better chance. Plus, you get the added bonus of giving some rookies some experience. So it's not so shocking when you might have to throw Edvinsson and Johansson and Kasper and Mazur all into the lineup next year. They're not going to do that, and that's part of the problem. But I don't know. This is the one part of the Yzer plan, you want to call it, that I'm at a loss for. I don't agree with everything he's done, but I understand it. This is the one where I'm just like, you're coming out of a rebuild and you have 0 rookies on the team. That seems insane to me.
The cap conversations are going to be aplenty this offseason. Even if the Red Wings make the playoffs, even if they, don't make the playoffs, or they do phenomenally in the story of the postseason, the offseason is going to be cap conversations. It's just the reality of it. Anyhow, that was the trade deadline. Kostin out, Berggren called up technically a day later, and that's it. Let's jump into the games. 3 games have happened that we haven't covered.
We jumped into the pool, but there was no water in there.
Yeah, that's how it feels right now. Detroit played 3 games. I'm going to give you a little spoiler. They lost all of them.
But wait, Ryan, wasn't one of those 3 games the lowly Arizona Coyotes?
I've never had to take blood pressure medication, but did I feel high strung that night. Anyhow, the first of the 3 games was actually the day we recorded the trade deadline preview, and thank goodness we recorded the preview before that game. It was a 7-2 loss to Colorado. 54 shots on goal. It was kind of similar to other games where Detroit held on. I think at the Edmonton game, they held on and then it just let go. They scored the opening goal. Robbie Fabry on the power play, really DeBrincat with a great play and passed it off Fabry's skate in. And then Perron gave the Red Wings the lead again when he was essentially left alone in front and had a couple cracks at the puck in front of Georgiev. They lost 7-2, and it was bad all around, like terrible all around. I don't pin this one on Alex Lyon. I don't think he's been exceptional.
It could have been way worse.
Could have been worse. They pulled Lyon after 5 goals. And again, like they were just getting walked all over. This wasn't a game where Seider was doing a great job of managing the other team's best players. Like there was no Red Wing on the ice that was doing anything notable or admirable in terms of managing, McKinnon, Makar, who got his first career hat trick against the Red Wings. Yay. Like every single one of the Colorado Avalanche's best players just walked all over Detroit. They brought Reimer in, and then he let in another couple goals. It was bad the moment Colorado just decided, hey, by the way, we're cup contenders, and we're going to show you exactly why. It was like the Edmonton game, but it lasted longer. And, I was watching that, and I thought, okay, not great. Definitely not what you want to see. But that was the Red Wings' first game without Larkin. Him being out for 2 weeks, it was never going to be easy. Against Colorado on the road, I'm not saying 7-2 and 54 shots against is good. I'm saying I'm not going to use that as a litmus test for how good the Red Wings actually are and what's coming next, because that's a tough test. They do need to be way better than, 54 shots against. They need to do their goalies a little bit more favors than that, especially when they've seen for the past couple of weeks, their goalies aren't exactly on fire right now. They need to manage better than that. And I said this, and I regret it because it's obviously stupid, but I said the sky's not falling. So let's breathe and see what happens next, because they have Arizona in a couple of days. I don't even want to talk about the Colorado game anymore, because I think the Arizona game is a worse loss, and I think the Arizona game is, all context included, the worst loss of the season for the Red Wings. Plain and simple.
Is it the worst loss, context included, since the rebuild started?
No,
because this is the first one that maybe mattered. There have been worse games, worse performances. We all remember the 9-2 loss to Arizona on the anniversary of, by the way.
Come on. This is on the actual anniversary.
But that game meant nothing. You're playing one of the worst teams in the league that traded away two of their top players that day. And this game means everything to you, sandwiched between Vegas and Colorado. I think with the context included, that's the worst loss since the rebuild. Because that was a must win. It is acceptable to lose hockey games to Colorado and Vegas any time of the year, because it's Colorado and Vegas. And you're a fringe playoff team. I understand that. Can't even be mad because Detroit took one from Colorado a couple weeks ago. And if you had offered me at that time a split, I would take it. I'd be thrilled. They could have lost 13-0. I'd still take the split. Vegas, okay, probably not going to win that game. Fine. But when you're sandwiching the Arizona Coyotes in between those two games, there's no reality. Detroit, coming off that loss in Colorado, where they were absent. I'm not even going to say they did anything. They just weren't there. No leadership, no hustle, nothing. Just a shell of a hockey game. The Red Wings traditionally have had a pretty good theme of coming back strong after games like that.
Much more resilient team this year.
So I was expecting the same score on Friday night, but in Detroit's favor. I thought they were going to beat the brakes off the Coyotes. They're on a 3-game skid. They just got embarrassed. Trade deadline comes and goes, so that stresses off the team. Walk out there and just lay the absolute smackdown on the absolute basement feeders, the Arizona Coyotes.
Who had lost, 16 of 18 games or something like that?
Something very close to that. And no urgency, no hustle, no effort until it was too late. And even then, it wasn't great. But they were down 3-0 by the time they realized the game had started, it seemed. Just a complete and utter lack of leadership. If anybody ever questions who the MVP of the Detroit Red Wings is, this stretch has answered it. It's Dylan Larkin. It's not close. Nobody on this roster brings even close to what he does in terms of tangibles and intangibles.
100%. This streak has shown us a lot of things that we both knew and didn't know about the Red Wings, but it has also shown that Dylan Larkin is painfully underrated. Painfully underrated. The Red Wings were down 1-0 within 2 minutes and 35 seconds. That to me is unacceptable. Like what you said, Brad, you need to come back after games like that, foot on the pedal, make it Arizona's problem that Colorado tuned you up 2 days ago. That is what good teams do. And I think Detroit has done that earlier this year. This, with the 7-2 loss against Colorado factored in, and with the knowledge that you're going in against the defending Cup champs who just loaded up at the trade deadline, the next night on a back-to-back, this was, in terms of the spirit of the game, not mathematically, but the spirit of the game, the most must-win game you've had in the past 7 years, in my mind. You need to win this game because you know you have Payne coming tomorrow and you know you have Payne after that because Larkin is still out for a long time. You let in a goal within 2 minutes, 35 seconds. You let in another goal about 6 minutes later. You let in another goal before the period's even over. They came out firing in the second. I thought they came out, whatever was said in the room was the right thing. Whoever said it said the right thing, and they came out firing. The pucks weren't going in for them. They had opportunities where I think the finishing could have been better. I think of a couple opportunities from DeBrincat, but some of it was just Ingram standing on his head. But I was like, they do this, and I can actually see them getting back in this game. And then Bukestad goes and scores, and it's 4-0. And then, to me, Detroit was lifeless. All year, we've talked about how they're more resilient. They don't fold under pressure. I think preparedness has been on and off all year. They were woefully, like unacceptably unprepared. They folded immediately. And even when they were able to muster up after the intermission, a little bit of fight back, even if it was too late, they managed to muster that up. It all went away after the fourth goal. And by the end of the game, I'm like, what am I watching? It feels like a funeral procession.
Feels like the Red Wings of old.
That game was, I don't care if they outchanced Arizona. I don't care if the pucks just weren't, going in for them at the same rate as Arizona's in terms of luck. Like, the Red Wings didn't do the right things that game from start to finish for them to deserve the win. Maybe on balance, Arizona should have only won, 4-3 or 3-2 or whatever, but that's just not, like, sometimes you can't take the storyline of the entire season and say, oh, well, if you consider all this, it's actually, you can't say the sky is falling and think about all the factors that go into it. I'm like the biggest pusher of that narrative a lot of the times. I try to keep a level head and understand where this team is in the standings, and you can't expect a win, just because it looks like it on the schedule. This game has a big red circle around it because you have to come in and make a statement. It has to come from your best players. And it was just pathetic from start to end. I know, like, this is one of those episodes where people who are way more angry than us are going to be angry for us not being angry enough. And there's people who are way more calm than us are angry at us for being way too angry. But to me, it's just like this 60 minutes specifically was an indictment on the Red Wings, and it shows, like, we knew they had a long way to go, but that still, to me, they didn't meet expectations at all.
Oh, we're angrier than this. I think we can all agree. The rational side of our brains right now is pushing through to make this a tolerable episode. So it's just not incoherent screaming and swearing for an hour and a half. But it's a double-sided coin because we've talked all year. Yeah, this team's resilient. They have the most third-period comebacks in the league, which also means they're losing a lot going into the third period, which isn't always the most sustainable way to win hockey games. And yeah, the fight back was good, but as I said, too little, too late. And then the drop off after the fourth goal, once again, embarrassing. I know we harp on bad contracts all the time, and it feels weird to focus this on one game, but one of the things that is always trumpeted is you bring in Kopp and Confer and Sherratt and Petrie and et cetera, because they're veterans. They bring in leadership and, complete whatever you want to call it. Larkin's gone. Where's this leadership? I haven't seen any this week. Like, who's taking charge in this room right now? Who gives a shit? Right now, it looks like nobody. It's hard to watch an NHL team fold like that. Again, I did not like the Colorado game. I did not like the way they approached it. I did not like the way they played it. But I can sit there and go, okay, but it's Colorado. Mm-hmm. Sometimes, even if you're at your best, you're going to lose a game. And if you're at your worst, you're going to get embarrassed. It happens. Losing to Colorado, perfectly acceptable, even in this playoff race, we'll call it.
I like the pause.
I'm trying. The rational side's taking over, Ryan. I'm trying. The Arizona game, again, the fact, and I'm not going to beat this to death, they should have absolutely sent a message to the rest of the league, and there should have just been a blood-soaked stain of the Arizona Coyotes after that game with how everything was going. And we get that. I question every player in the room after that game.
Like, Detroit's best players outside of the, so-called leaders or the veteran guys that you're talking about, I also think it's like the talent players that are brought in. DeBrincat had opportunities to score. And
he's a veteran.
Patrick Kane, like, I understand Dylan Larkin's a big facilitator of both of those guys' success. They both needed to step up and take charge. I actually saw quite a bit that I liked from Lucas Raymond, but it's not like he broke through. Detroit lost that game, and that was the first time where I allowed myself to think, yeah, this is bad. Like, alarm bells are sounding because they have now set themselves up where unless they come in and do something very difficult against Vegas the next night, which is extremely unlikely, all context considered, Detroit is going to be in a position where they are going to be racing neck and neck with teams who are healthier, have better momentum, are playing better right now. The margin is gone. The next night, they came into Vegas, and the game didn't start great. For the first 15 minutes, they were down 2-0 after 15 minutes. And
slow start, unprepared, shocking.
And we thought, okay, this might be, a beginning of a slide that is way uglier than it even looks now. And then actually really key, Mo Seider took a shot from the point. A good job by Perron to get puck back to Seider. Seider took the shot. Rasmussen tipped it in before the end of the first period. And I thought, okay, that was a crucial goal. And then second period, nothing. Detroit's effort was a lot better. Through 40 minutes, you can tell Detroit's effort was way, way better. They weren't dominating Vegas. They got outshot very heavily in the first period, and the total shots were 36-26 in the end. But, Detroit on the road, back-to-back, no Larkin. If they brought that effort against Arizona, they probably would have won. And if they brought that effort against Colorado, they would have lost by less. JT Compher scored beautiful tip, again off a Mo Seider point shot, and the game was tied. Braden McNabb scored, Vegas went up, Gostisbehere tied it. And then Marchessault scored, and then Marchessault got the hat trick. Stupid hat tricks against Detroit. My God, so annoying. But that was a game where if you look at how it played out on balance, as a standalone, you're like, Detroit lost that game. It wasn't a perfect effort by everyone in front of Reimer, but Reimer had an awful game. That was a Reimer game, and very similar to the Islanders game, where Detroit didn't have a great effort, but they probably lost that game because of Lyon. But you put that into the context of how the entire last 14 days have gone, and you're like, oh yeah, context doesn't really matter because that was their fifth straight loss. And that sucks because now you put yourself in a position where you had to ask James Reimer to stand on his head against the defending Stanley Cup champions. Even though they've been on a slump, it's a hard task, and he looked off the whole night. Now Detroit's on a 5-game losing streak.
I think the one thing for me that compounds the anxiety and the frustration is the fact that everyone behind them in the standings is having a time right now.
Oh, God.
Except for Pittsburgh.
Well, Pittsburgh, they're
and
gone.
New Jersey.
They're gone. But when you look at the Islanders, they're 6-2-2 and have won 5 in a row. You look at Washington, they're 7-2-1 in their last 10, and they've won 2 in a row. The gap has been erased, and it's we're treading water, but we're definitely taking some water in the lungs right now. It's not good, and
yeah.
I think that's what's making this whole streak since Wednesday so much more unbearable to witness.
Yeah, I just couldn't. When they made the decision to start Lyon against Arizona and Reimer against Vegas, I questioned it for a second, but then I thought, if you're thinking Arizona's the must win, I get it. Useless in the end because the team didn't show up on the. Not that there's ever a right night to not show up, but there's definitely nights where it's worse to not show up, and Detroit did not show up on the correct night. But yeah, you if you can take 2 games in this entire skid for me and you turn them around reasonably, not Florida, not Colorado, not Vegas, because not that you always lose to better teams. Philly beat Florida in Florida. Let's just make that clear. But the Islanders game and the Arizona game. The Islanders game is a game that Detroit should have won in my mind. In the Arizona game, Detroit didn't play well enough to win, but they should have been able to beat them handily. If you're not getting the save from your goaltender, you need to show up and make the difference, and it's just they didn't. The Vegas one was tough. The Vegas one was tough because I actually think they did enough to sneak out a point there, and then you just had the opposite of what the clutch performance that Reimer put up in previous games show up.
I'm not going to harp on it mid-season, but let's just say this is going to be referenced in the summer when we have a lot of questions about roster construction. Because they keep getting sewered from different positions constantly.
Yeah. And, the big thing is, it's not just the leadership. It's not just, the impact of playing for Dylan Larkin as your captain. He's a facilitator for 2 of your most important forwards in Kane and DeBrincat. He allows Lucas Raymond to play down the lineup and be a facilitator there. Dylan Larkin is the best player on the Red Wings, the MVP, and he is the most significant cornerstone. So removing him, the down lineup effects are painful. Really, really painful. And when you start getting caved on offense, your defense that is barely staying afloat to start just gets caved even worse, especially when you play teams who will punish you for that, like Colorado. Tangibles and intangibles, Dylan Larkin's absence. You're right, Brad. That impact is...
This is a big week then, because the Red Wings get essentially 2 days off of rest and they go into Buffalo, Arizona, Buffalo, right?
Yeah.
Have to go 3-0. I don't care what anybody says.
Buffalo on the road and then Arizona, Buffalo at home.
What we see on Tuesday is... I hate that I keep saying every single time or every week there's a litmus test, but it seems like all we do is pull at another litmus test because this team continues to have to show what the hell they're doing. The game Tuesday is huge. You know, you're on a losing streak. It looks bad. The vibes couldn't be any lower right now. You have to go into Buffalo and absolutely run them out of the building.
Buffalo right now is 7 points back at Detroit, and they play them twice in pretty quick succession. Like,
it could get bad here, but I'm not going to allow myself to think like that.
Okay. Let's take a quick break and come back to the playoff race in Detroit's schedule because we want to let you know that this episode of the Winged Wheel podcast is proudly brought to you by Labatt Blue Light. Created in 1983, this premium light Canadian Pilsner is a delicately balanced beer brewed with Cascade hops and a blend of malt. It's fresh, crisp, and brewed to the highest quality standards. There's a little bit of Canadian kindness in every sip of Labatt Blue Light. How did it get in there? They're Canadian. That's how. You can spread the love yourself by sharing a Labatt. And when you do share a Labatt, you're not just sharing a beer. You're sharing an experience that'll pair with anything from hockey to a hoedown, which I think is similar to what Evan's dressed for right now. So next time you're watching a hockey with your buds, be sure to share a Labatt, because while you might not all root for the same team, although we on this podcast do hope you're rooting for the Red Wings, you can all enjoy a Labatt Blue Light. We honestly love going to games in Detroit and seeing Labatt being the beer that fans clamor for all over the arena. It's a reliable beer and great to have in your hand when celebrating a goal. So head to the link in the description of this episode or the one you see on your screen to find Labatt in stores near you today. You must be 21 or older, and as always, enjoy responsibly. All right, welcome back. As we discussed, Detroit has a really important schedule coming up. On Tuesday, they have Buffalo on the road, and that ends their 4-game road trip here. And then we're going to be back with you on Wednesday to hopefully talk about them turning things around. After that, at home, they have Arizona and Buffalo again. And then they have, on Sunday, on the road, Pittsburgh. And we'll be with you after the Pittsburgh game. We know better than to try to record before that. God knows what's going to happen there. After that, Columbus, the Islanders, which is, Evan, you've been talking about that one. That one is magnified to 1,000,000 in terms of the importance of that game.
I was always thinking that would be the one where we would end their season, and now I'm a little bit worried.
Season might be ended. So here's the situation. Even after, how we just dunked on the Red Wings, like they didn't show up, everything's going poorly. We didn't even talk about Walman got sat against Vegas. It was a coach's decision. Rasmussen looked to be hurt at the end of the game. Brad mentioned the AHL. Simon Edvinsson left the game after blocking a shot, didn't return. We need to figure out how bad that is. It's all doom and gloom. Yeah. Detroit is still in the second wildcard spot as of right now. The problem is the Islanders have 2 games in hand, and they're only 2 points behind, so they have a higher points percentage. Detroit has 1 game in hand on Tampa Bay, who's 2 points ahead, but they don't have the first tiebreaker, which is regulation win. So even if Detroit wins their game in hand on Tampa Bay, they don't gain that first wildcard spot back. Washington has 2 games in hand on Detroit, and they are 3 points back. So Washington, who I think last episode we said is not looking so hot and could be out of this, they could technically pass Detroit. New Jersey, I'm not going to say New Jersey's out of it. I learned my lesson, but New Jersey isn't among the 2 most immediate threats for Detroit. But losing 5 in a row, the Islanders won 5 in a row, 10 points right there. Losing 5 in a row, the Capitals are 7-2-1. Like the whole margin, the cushion, the reason why we were so optimistic before is because we said even if Detroit regresses, they really only need 4 points out of the next 10. Considering their opponents and considering what else is happening, for us to continue to see Detroit in a strong playoff spot, relatively speaking, as much as you can be in a strong position in the wild card race. 5 in a row is unacceptable. But if Detroit took, 4 total, let's say the Arizona game and the Islanders game, that is a massive difference. But now it is a neck and neck race until the end of the season, at best.
I know Philly's there as well, and we have to keep our eye on them. And
yep,
like the next 8 games for the Red Wings, the only team they play that has solidified a playoff spot is Nashville. It's 7 fringy playoff teams or just straight up non-playoff teams. What's the minimum now? 5, 2-1?
Yeah, well, I think Prashant's latest models or like scraping of the models that he looks at has them projected lower than the playoff cutoff line, like what the points is going to be. They were not long ago, like a blink ago, they were projected for 97 points, which would have been comfortably over. But yeah, now they're below it. So I no longer think they can go 500. You're right. Like they, even just in terms of like energy and momentum, they need to be going significantly better than 5. I think they need to win their next 3, if not 4.
They have to. They absolutely have to.
Or at least they're taking, like, let's be a little bit more realistic. They're taking a lot more points than, well, first of all, 0, but like well above 500 points percentage.
Well, look at this 8-game stretch of what we can call favorable matchups. Not that such a thing exists for the Red Wings right now. And then they get Carolina and Florida. I'm sorry, like, you need to start banking points. Anything close to 500 in this 8-game stretch is a failure.
Like if they go over their next 4 games, which is what's talked about as that's how long Larkin's going to be out, and we don't know if that's going to extend longer. You have to imagine Dylan Larkin's watching this and trying to find, the super serum that they injected into Captain America to try to get back sooner. But let's say he's out until after the Pittsburgh game. That's 4 games. They can't take only 2 of those in my mind. Or if they do, they're going to have a tall task. Now, like, still carrying the energy of the top half of the show here, so it's probably sounding a little bit more pessimistic. But I will say, despite all of this, and even though it's bad that Detroit spent their margin this early rather than sitting on it into April, spending that margin and having that margin previous means they're not out of it. We've seen Detroit turn things around. December to January, that was on a dime. Maybe Alex DeBrincat needs to fight someone again, but they've done it before, but they have to do it now. They have to do it now, otherwise they're going to need a lot of help. There's going to be a lot of schedule watching, and there's going to be a lot of luck involved to get them back in it. And 4 games of that without Dylan Larkin, give or take.
The fact it started snowing today, you could have absolutely convinced me we were back in December.
Detroit needs to dig deep. There's a lot of conversation about what is a successful season for the Red Wings, and over a broader narrative, we'll have that conversation at the end of the year. But I really don't begrudge people who are saying, no, this team was in a playoff spot. They had that cushion and they were playing well enough. And it's not like they were doing it, with one guy scoring 100 points. The whole team was playing in such a way where they were able to squeeze points out of games that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to. I understand shooting percentages regress and goaltending heaters regress, and that's going to expose a lot of things and flaws that Detroit has. And that's very true. If someone points that out, valid. That's what happened. But as a fan, I don't think there's anything wrong with saying this complete and utter collapse over 5 games is still unacceptable, no matter how surprising it was that Detroit was in that position to start.
Also doesn't help that it was the ways they lost too, right? It's not just, we're hanging in there, we were playing against really good teams that we liked what the team showed. It was the exact opposite. This team was non-existent. What
does Detroit have to do moving forward? Because we've talked. Yes.
Just win, baby? Is that it?
I don't know if I'm saying that one this episode. That is the truth. They have to just win, even if it's ugly. First off, Lyon and Reimer, they have to pull it together. Lyon, I think we're seeing a little bit of why there's a lot of conversation about this is the most games he's played, and you don't count on him as a bona fide starter without, looking for some help. I wouldn't be surprised if Steve Yzerman continues to look for help. Maybe those Markstrom conversations continue in the offseason. You have to try to outspend New Jersey. Reimer, I don't know. To me, that's a mixed bag. He never plays in such a way where I'm comfortable watching that goalie. Sometimes he gets the results, and he had a few clutch performances. The Vegas game was god-awful. And so Detroit needs to get a save. Secondly, their best players need to show up and find a way to break through, even if they don't have Dylan Larkin. Like, you need to score. Depth scoring is depth scoring, and that's nice. But if you want difference makers, it has to be DeBrincat converting on his opportunities. It has to be Kane. Raymond has to break through. They need to continue to do that in the team defense, because you can't ask any more of this defense because the roster is just not equipped for it. The team needs to buckle down and help their defense, because they are getting tunneled, like absolutely caved every single night right now. And the team defense needs to come together, and that's how they have to support their goalies and their top pairing.
I feel like we're talking in circles now.
What, you mean for the past 9 years?
It's a big circle.
Buffalo next, and then next episode. That's, a lot of these games are going to fall under the category of not mathematically must win, but that runway is getting shorter. And in terms of vibes, we're at must win territory right now.
I would love 2 weeks ago Ryan to talk to today's Ryan.
No, I would not. I hate that guy.
You two
would a loser.
It would just be a fist fight.
What a
and
bum.
I would love it.
There would be no one I'd be happier to punch in the world. And I'm sitting next to Brad right now.
That says a lot. I want to punch that Ryan too, so you just let me know when I can.
That's what happens when you leave. You left me and Brad alone on a winning streak.
It's
your fault. This is Evan Lobsinger's fault. We're losing right now. Detroit's losing because of Evan Lobsinger.
It's very true.
I don't want to hear about, defense or Larkin hurt or jersey patch or anything. It's Evan's fault. That's who we're blaming.
I'm sorry.
You should be. Okay, a lot of negativity. Let's jump into the rest of the league and hopefully dunk on other people. The trade deadline across the league. Vegas, what the hell?
They're doing what every contender should be doing every year.
Until they change the CBA, yeah.
Yeah, don't be mad at Vegas. If you can be mad at this situation, be mad at the rules. It's always been insane to me that the salary cap is different for the playoffs than it is in the regular season. You should only be able to dress a salary cap compliant team for every game in the playoffs. But those aren't the rules. So if that's not the rules, exploit the hell out of it. And it's not even that they exploit the LTIR because Mark Stone gets hurt every year. And again, I don't think Mark Stone is faking an injury. I think Kelly McCrimmon hit him with a tire iron in the parking lot. But
yeah, he might not be back in the playoffs.
No, he might not. It's a lacerated spleen.
The Red Wings need to target the most injury-prone superstar-level players.
Yes.
Full stop.
100%. But when unfortunate situations like that pop up, capitalize. You have a wide-open contention window. Futures mean nothing to you right now. Trade it all. Get whoever the hell's on the market. Vegas does it. Noah Hanifin? Sounds great. We'll take him. Tomas Hertl might be available? Hell yeah, sign me up. Anthony Mantha, 20 goals this year. Sounds like someone we could use. Every contender that's not doing this is wrong. And now, hockey's still random fluke luck. These guys are going to run into maybe Vancouver or Edmonton in the first round, and their playoffs last all of 5 games. But you load up to give yourself every advantage you can. And some contenders absolutely did that. Some, Toronto, didn't.
I'm here. I know it's irrational to dislike Vegas after this past week, but I love the fact that everybody hates Vegas right now. Vegas are like the evil empire now, and I love it. I always love heels. I have all the time in the world in any sport I watch for the villains to have success. And man, people hating on Vegas right now is the best.
I think the only people who love that more than you are Vegas and Vegas' fans.
Oh, 100%.
I'm with Evan on this one. You can hate them because they're good, but what they're doing, there's 2 things that I absolutely can't tolerate.
It's probably also frustrating because people are like, why the hell are we not doing this?
Exactly. That's probably the main of what it is. Like, if you're a Leaf fan and you hit Vegas, you can do what they do. You just don't. You have a GM who doesn't. Because there's so much revisionist history with Vegas. Oh, Gary Bettman gifted them a team. Go back to the summer after their expansion draft. Find me one beat writer or one national writer or any sports personality that predicted them to make the playoffs. They didn't.
No.
Nobody did. And yeah, Mark Stone gets hurt every year. I don't think that can be part of your game plan for what you're going to do. I don't think Mark Stone, with his long history of back injuries, is doing this on purpose. Anybody with a bad back would trade anything to not have that.
I think there's like definitely timelines that they're stretching, and as much as they can
100%.
get around like the NHL doctors and those reports.
100%.
Yeah.
But if you think your favorite team was in that position, they wouldn't do the exact same thing, shut the hell up. If Dylan Larkin was hurt going into the playoffs and there was a chance we're going to make the playoffs, and the doctors were saying he could come back April 6th, but the playoffs started April 15th, I'd snap if he came back April 6th.
Yeah, I want Noah Hanifin.
Exactly. Go use that cap space and bring him back game 1 of the playoffs. Oh, it looks suspicious. I don't care. Like, everybody on the planet.
You limp every single day. You take the handicap parking spot until we tell you to stop.
If you are getting up in the middle of the night to go to your ensuite washroom and not even walking across a window, you limp to the washroom.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Vegas's trades. They brought in Noah Hanifin, and it only got finalized after, like, that happened kind of as we were recording the preview, but the return came after. They traded a prospect, a first, a third. There's conditions on everything. And they also paid a fifth to Philly to retain salary to make it all work because they were loading up for another big move. But you know, the first condition on the third is it moves to a second round pick if Vegas wins one playoff round. And the condition on the first is they essentially had the option to move which first that they were trading because they wanted to, you know, retain it to make another move. Later in the day, and pretty much at like the buzzer, a move that had everyone going, what's going on, is Tomas Hertl of the San Jose Sharks, who has 6 years remaining on his contract, and I think a full no move, was traded from San Jose to division rival Vegas. There is a picture of Tomas Hertl punching who's at Mark Stone in the face. They acquired David Edstrom, their previous first-round pick, who's a fine player. I like David Edstrom as a prospect, and a 2025 first. Next year's first. In exchange for Hertl and 2 third-round picks. And Hertl, he had salary retained, over 17% of his salary retained by San Jose for the next 6 years. You retain salary to get him to Vegas at $6.75 million instead of his overall compensation, which is 8 or 8 something, for 6 years. And you sent 2/3. It's not like they got nothing. Edstrom's a good prospect. A first-round pick's a first-round pick. It's not for this offseason, so that's a whole other thing. But you retain salary for 6 years to help a division rival for 6 years. You could be good in 6 years, and you sent them 2/3. I understand the notion of they're a bottom feeder. It's going to take them a while to get back, and
it's going to take them 6 years.
It's going to Hertl's not at the right age to hang on to him for all that time. You trade him for value now. I'm sorry. That is a bum trade.
You can do that trade. Just don't do it to Vegas.
Don't do it. If you're going to make that trade, I'd still call it bad. Doing it to Vegas Greer just got that job not long ago. I'm actually considering, is he right for this job? I don't understand it.
Well, hopefully Steve Yzerman's calling San Jose. It's not that they have much of interest anyway, but
God,
you got to be calling them all the time now.
And if Hertl's on the market, make it known. Drum up the interest for a year. Look at what every other team has done. Look what Calgary just did. Like, I don't even think Calgary got good returns, but to me, it's not like they gave Hanifin to Edmonton for a terrible return. I don't get that one from San Jose's perspective. Why would you help the Golden? Why would you help the heel?
I think they've got all of their salary retention spots filled up, and it goes off of Cap Friendly's like allowed window of time. Like it continues past it. They basically broke Cap Friendly.
They got 2 or 3 more years of retention on Erik Karlsson. They've got 6 years on Hertl.
Oh, they have 3 after this.
3 after this.
1 more on Brent Burns after this, and then 6 on Hertl.
So a rebuilding team who's going to be in the basement of the league next trade deadline will not be able to retain any salary on any trade they want to make and go to their buyouts. The amount of dead money on this team right now is shocking. Like, this is malpractice for a rebuilding team.
I'm
there's going to be 6. There's going to be 6 people at their games.
There was a moment in the trade when it first broke where the 2/3 were in there. Everybody thought the 2/3 were going to San Jose, and most people were still saying feels a bit light. And then all of a sudden, oh my God.
The salary retention to me, like salary cap is the name of the game. Detroit is a fringe playoff team right now, and we're talking about how they're going to be in salary cap pain next year. I understand it's going up, but you don't help a team who is going to have to continue to make really tough decisions. They've done it well, but they're going to have to continue to make tough decisions like the Golden Knights. You don't help them for 6 years. That is worth a first plus just by itself, let alone the player. The kicker is, and it's almost comedic, Tomas Hertl is Tomas Hurt right now, and he's going to be back. I think he'll be back before the playoffs is what they said, but it's just like that adds to how funny this all is, and it just feeds into like the evil empire that is Vegas. I understand they're not exactly the best position in the Western Conference right now, but man, are they well positioned to defend that cup.
If this was a San Jose podcast instead of a Red Wings podcast,
oh my God,
I think this table would be upside down right now.
Yeah.
Just think of I know Thomas Hertl and Dylan Larkin are not 1-to-1, but imagine they traded him to Toronto. They traded Dylan Larkin to Toronto, and we got the shit end of a deal in a trade. And then we have to watch Dylan Larkin clown us while we're terrible for the next 6 years or whatever Hertl's contract is. I would die.
Their only hope right now is they win Macklin Celebrini. And in the
Gavin
future,
McKenna.
Yeah. And Misa
remember, you can only win 2 lotteries, and they're going to be in it for 6 years.
Hopefully they don't win the wrong one.
Man, it is bleak in San Jose right now.
Tough sledding.
All right. Other big trades, and, to continue to dunk on teams, Pittsburgh seems like they're in disarray, and that Guentzel trade left a lot of people wondering, was that enough for the return and for getting rid of Guentzel? Now, the context with Guentzel is it was pretty well thought that he was not going to sign in Pittsburgh. I'm sure they tried, but it was just over. I know Crosby's not happy about it. If you think that doesn't matter, I promise you it does. But they traded him to the Carolina Hurricanes, him and Ty Smith, at 25% retained. So they retained $1.5 million on Jake Guentzel. They have him for $4.5 million. It's an expiring contract. And then in return, they got Michael Bunting. That's the same salary. Vasily Ponomarev, Cruz Lucius, Ville Koivunen, a second and a fifth, and there's conditions on those. So not terrible, but was that the return that the Penguins were hoping for, getting rid of a player as impactful and as probably underratedly good as Jake Guentzel?
The Penguins are a classic case of being half pregnant and being all the worse off for it. Either rebuild or don't. I understand you have Crosby, Malkin, Letang for a long time. I get it. You don't want to trade them. And I would argue you shouldn't trade them because of what it means to the franchise and legacy, all that fun stuff. Everything else has to go. And I know they wanted quantity instead of quality because they just don't have a farm system right now. They don't have a prospect pool. It's shockingly thin, but they left quality on the table because of it. Not getting a first round pick for Jake Guentzel, again, feels like malpractice. Getting 3, maybe play third, fourth line roles on your team, prospects at best, feels wrong. There's a reality, there's a very strong reality. The Penguins walk away from this trade with not one single player who plays in their top 9 or top 4. Based on the odds of these prospects hitting and what a second round pick traditionally gets you.
It's a lot of not terrible darts at the dartboard, but look at how Pittsburgh fans and Pittsburgh writers talk about Jake Guentzel. Like, people who don't watch hockey beyond their own team and maybe don't watch the Penguins at all, they probably are prone to underrating what Guentzel's impact is. He is a player, yeah, of course he's benefited from being on Crosby's team. When you play with the best player on the planet, that's going to happen. But he is an incredibly talented, smart player who also makes the guys around him better. Like, he deserves all of his, awards and statistics that he's racked up over the years. He is a huge part of why Pittsburgh was able to be good even after, the prime years of Crosby and Malkin and whatever. That one felt light to me. It's two things for me with Pittsburgh in the impossible position they're in, as you noted, Brad. One, Kyle Dubas had a thankless task. He knows what you need to do for this team, and you have the face of your entire franchise to the point where you may as well give Sidney Crosby shares of the team because he owns it that much, who wants to keep his guys together and continue to be good every year in the face of what the reality is in the modern NHL, which is you just can't do that perpetually. And two, I don't think Kyle Dubas handles pressure trades like that well. We saw it from the time in Toronto. It's very hit or miss for me. I don't think he's the world's best GM on that front. So Pittsburgh's going to be seeing some pain, I think, for a little while. I still don't think, like I know we talked about it, I still don't think that that Crosby's out, though. I think he's here for the long haul, for better or for worse. Carolina, though, they also went and added Kuznetsov at half retained for, I think, a third-round pick. So Kuznetsov, who just cleared waivers, but the half retained is a big difference maker there. It's a lot of money to be paying him for another year as well, but the firepower and the talent that they're going to have in that lineup that's a scary team in the East now.
Oh, they still have a great prospect pool. They're one of the best teams in the league. They loaded up. Even though Kuznetsov's a gamble, if it hits, it'll hit big just because of the type of the player he is. And their future isn't compromised whatsoever. It's masterful work.
So the trade that you were talking about earlier, Brad, where the Jets picked up Tyler Toffoli, they picked him up for a 2025 second-round pick and a 2024 third-round pick. And they also picked up later on a lesser noticed deal, but from New Jersey, Colin Miller for a fourth-round pick. The Jets, I thought they had a tidy little, actually all the moves they've made even well before the deadline, but they've loaded up too. Monahan,
Toffoli, and Miller. That's not a bad haul considering how little they gave up, relatively speaking, to get all three of them. Obviously I'm still big pro Vegas model of throw everything at the wall and just get the biggest players available, but this is tidy work. This is a great way to load up for a run without completely mortgaging your future.
New Jersey traded a third-round pick that turns into a second. That's a condition on it for Jake Allen at 50% retained. And I understand Jake Allen's not dominating the league this year, but Jake Allen's a really good goalie who's come into other situations and done a lot. And I know New Jersey was on Markstrom for a long time, and they complained, about, we made the Allen deal because Montreal wasn't trying to be extortionate in their prices, as if GMs are in anything other than to get the most for themselves. And they went and got Jake Allen. So I get that they were on Markstrom for a while, but why not do this deal way sooner?
I was going to say, great deal, 3 months too late. And they got him at half retained, so that doesn't preclude them from doing something bigger and better in net in the summer.
Because they'll have Allen for another year.
Yeah, and they got Kakinen from San Jose as well and unloaded Vanacek. Again, tidy piece of business. 3 months too late. So
you should have done both. You should have done Markstrom and Allen.
Oh, 100%. Why not?
Look, the teams in the wild card spots right now are not exactly hanging on there. If you switch New Jersey's goaltending, leave the Hamilton injury, leave everything out, the Hughes, any injury time, whatever. Leave all of that. If you switch their goaltending from, Vanacek, Dawes, or whatever, to Allen, Markstrom 2 months ago, I think that's a playoff team.
They're ahead of Philly.
They're the biggest reason why the Red Wings probably won't be a playoff team next year because they're going to be on the come up as well. To relate everything back to the Red Wings, teams are coming. Can't be stagnant.
Nashville's pickup of Zucker. We talked about why it was cheap for the money. I thought that was still a really cheap price to pay. A late pick is a really cheap price to pay. And that's a team who is very, very surprising in what they were able to do this year.
Oh, yeah. That's rewarding your team for getting on a heater after punishing them for a really rough stretch. No U2 for them, but here's a Jason Zucker.
What's with Toronto and how they handled it?
Dude, they have a bad GM.
They do. I'm sorry. They didn't exactly upgrade. It's not like Dubas was a world beater, and with the whole soap opera that's Shanahan, Dubas, and all of MLSE, I don't even begrudge either side for making the decisions that they did. But Treliving's just more of the same. What they spent, however many picks, they were very precious about their top picks and prospects for Edvinsson and Lyubushkin. Oh, and they brought in Cade Weber.
Cool. Nobody good. At best, you get a usable bottom pair out of Lyubushkin and Edvinsson. Yeah, they didn't have to give up a lot. That's great. can't wait for all these picks and prospects to come into the Leafs 2-3 years after their window is closed. Like, hey, Fraser Minton, okay prospect. Easton Cowan, great prospect. First round picks, love him. Are any of those helping the Leafs win a cup? Because by the time they are established NHLers with any value, Matthews, Marner, Nylander are all in their 30s. You think that's when they're getting it done? Sorry, this is the difference between Vegas and Toronto, is you have your old school GM who spends 6 weeks negotiating a trade of a third round pick for a depth defenseman and can't go big game hunting, boys. It's hard. It's hard to make big trades. Meanwhile, Vegas ripped off 3 while you were having that conversation. I laugh. Old school GM, old school philosophy. Nothing happens. Hasn't worked before. Probably not going to work now.
Great for the Red Wings.
Oh,
yeah.
I have to say,
the
like,
Wings.
The most consistent team in the league has to be the Toronto Maple Leafs, because even when teams who shouldn't be laughing at anyone else and fan bases who shouldn't be laughing at anyone else, which is the Red Wings right now, you're still going to do it. And when the Dallas Cowboys of the NHL, continue to be the Dallas Cowboys of the NHL, it's a little bit of solace. Like, it doesn't help the Red Wings situation at all. They still have to pull themselves out of this skid. They still maybe did just potentially ruin their playoff chances, but you get to laugh at the Leafs. And now the Leafs, like Brad said, they didn't load up compared to other teams around them, and they're going to have to rely on essentially the same thing they've gone into every other playoff push with, but worse in some ways. So Godspeed. It'll be fun to watch from not the Leafs perspective. I hope we don't care, because Detroit's playing someone else in the playoffs and we're not watching on the outside, but that's a different story. All right. I'm not going to extend a bleak episode any longer than we need to, so let's jump into overtime. Overtime on this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast is brought to you by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast if you want to support the show. Again, you get access to the Discord, the ticket giveaway, as well as the bonus episodes. You allow us to do things like host Winged Wheel Podcast nights with the Detroit Red Wings and the Grand Rapids Griffins. Additionally, you allow us to support the Jamie Daniels Foundation and continue to make the show hopefully bigger and better. So again, patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast. All right, some questions here from our patrons. Johnny Page says, who's a brand new name level supporter, welcome, and thank you so much for your support. Says, with the defense playing the way it is right now, Walman sitting, etc., why not call up Edvinsson? He has to be an upgrade over someone, and disrupting chemistry can no longer be used as an excuse. 2-3 weeks ago, I would have said, I understand not bringing him up now through the rest of the end of the season. And now I think I've changed my mind to a degree back to, I want to see him in, provided that he's healthy, mind you, because it looks like we're at a critical mass for this defense's woes right now.
Yeah, we're at a critical point in the defense here, and I feel like we just keep repeating ourselves in the Simon Edvinsson conversation. Bring this guy in. I no longer care about, developing at the AHL level. It's time for him to mature at the NHL level. Veteran players be damned.
All right, next question here from Dustin Penner's pancake-induced back injury says, is it time to start the prospect profiles? No. I promise you the last sign of conceding this playoff fight won't be the points in the standings. It'll be us in the prospect profiles, just because it's fun to not do them right now.
Agreed.
And it's not like Detroit's going to be working with, we're not talking about Macklin Celebrini for Detroit, even if things do go south for them. So, yeah, not very fond of that idea. Frank the Tank says, do you think Yzerman's number one goal this summer is to get the team a legit number 2 to 3 defenseman to either pair with Seider or lead the second pair? It's quite clear that of the 7 on our roster, 1 to 2 have a future and the rest don't. I think the targets have to be Hanifin or Pesce, or of the free agent class, or along those lines. Can't go into next season with Edvinsson being the only change inserted.
With what cap space?
Well, the cap space is going to have to solve no matter what. So I think you're both correct. I think you have, if you're going to make this a playoff team next year, you're going to have to dish some serious salary out.
And how do you do that? You're giving up a whole lot of first and second round picks to do it, because nobody's touching some of these contracts with a 10-foot pole. Oh, and let's not forget that glaring hole in the top 6 as well at forward. This team's got some serious work to do, and some of it not his fault, but the salary issue being his fault. Yzerman's got to solve some problems that he has inherited, and he's got to solve some problems that he has created, and neither of them are going to be easy.
Sergeant Slim Jim says, hey boys, I've been seeing something on the ice that I don't understand. Sometimes a Wings player will race to beat an opponent to the puck and it looks like they'll beat him to it or at least tie him on the boards, only to back off and settle for guarding the other guy. What's going on? Do they see a developing play somewhere or am I just crazy? Thanks. Please get better soon. Larkin, let's go Red Wings.
Yeah, usually it's something else. You notice, because there's plays, let's just say there's a dump in the offensive zone and it looks like a 50-50 race to the puck. If the Red Wings forechecker realizes that even if he gets there at the same time, he's going to be on the wrong side or have a bad angle, and if the defender gets the puck, he's going to be caught down low and it'll be an easy breakout. He's sacrificing a possible puck win to you are not getting this puck out cleanly type of situation. And little things like that happen all over the ice. But yeah, it's just usually the context of where you are relative to what's going on around you.
Question here from John Elvidge says, I'm worried Lyon is hitting his wall like Husso did last year. Lyon had played 71 games in his career, 31 of those this year. He only played 15 last year for Florida, and that was his career high. I saw him play last year for Florida, and he did start the playoffs. Don't remember if Bob was still out or Maurice let Lyon start the playoffs. I have tickets to the March 30th game here in Florida. I hope it goes better than the last Detroit versus Florida match. I think Lyon is tired. Like, even if you are... Like, we talked last episode, and we got a question that said, you know, what hypothetical would you prefer? And one of the options was the Swayman-Ullmark conversation. And by the way, Ullmark turned down a trade. I think it was to LA, rumored. So Boston gets to keep those two goalies. But we said the Swayman-Ullmark formula, that's the solution in the modern NHL. And right now, Detroit has Lyon, and when they're absolutely forced to, they have Reimer. Husso's been hurt or bad all year, pretty much. He's had like a few good games. That's a lot on Lyon. So I think you're perfectly correct in saying we are seeing him hit a wall. He could get better as time goes on. He's not 20, he's 30 years old. So it's still not like he's going to develop like a 24-year-old goalie. He could shoulder a little bit more, but a goalie with his experience was always going to hit some kind of a wall this year in my mind.
Yep. Inexperienced goalie does not step up to the plate over the long haul. Not new. And it's not that, I shouldn't say step up to the plate. That makes it sound like he's choking or not living up. He's gassed. He's tired. And look at his career numbers. He's not a 920 goalie. That was a nice stretch he was on, but that's not who he is regularly. So
it's also very hard to be a 920 goalie in the modern NHL.
Yeah, exactly.
He's still, like, I can think of a couple games where I'm like, you would have wanted better than Lyon, and Detroit might have been able to take a point or two. For the most part, he is right there next to Dylan Larkin as the team's MVP. If you want to criticize Steve Yzerman for not making a major move, to me, I'm just like, what else was out there? If you want to criticize Steve Yzerman for not making a minor move, a backup goalie would have been nice. I know it's hard to do, but it would have been nice.
My whole criticism is just signing Reimer. I'm sorry, you would have got the exact same performance, if not maybe slightly better, out of Michael Hutchinson this year. You paid $1 million whatever to get Reimer, who's been largely terrible. We can count the quality starts he's had this year probably on one hand.
My thing is, like, they did, like, coming in with Husso, Lyon, and Reimer should have been enough to keep them afloat. The Husso injuries are the really big thorn in this, right? Like, that's between Husso and Reimer, you should have a guy who can, you know, not crap the bed on a certain night. Like the backup situation, one of them had to play between Arizona and Vegas, and really you'd like your starter in both, but Lyon is obviously gassed. Would have been nice to have the option of Husso or Reimer. Anyhow, Curtis, there's a lot of questions about the patch. Curtis says, if the team loses every game for the rest of the season, does the patch get removed? Is that worth the price? Look up Detroit's jersey ad space is among the most valuable in the league. I promise you it. No.
Like, not to sound harsh, and I understand the sentiment. I've seen GoFundMes, I've seen petitions to get this patch removed. Guys, you have other battles that you could probably win. You're not winning this one. You're just not.
The entire league, from the owners to the players, want that many millions of dollars.
The players want that money. The owners want that money. The GMs want the salary cap to go up. If NHL owners had their way, these would look like European teams.
Oh God, yeah,
they would. So I'm not saying you have to like it.
We don't.
Nobody does. We'd all prefer it not to be there. Like, trust me, I hate it too. I hate it, but it's not even worth talking about because nothing is going to happen. If anything, they'll double down and make a bigger, uglier one next year.
No,
like,
they'll make it blue.
No.
Just it's small and it's white. We did as well as we could.
Hey, like you.
Yes.
All right. Well, that's probably a good sign that we're going to wrap up this episode. Some episodes are more negative than others, so I know they're not the most fun to listen to, but you know what? It's whether you agree with the pessimism or you think that it was not angry enough, no matter what, we do appreciate you tuning in, and let's just hope that after the Buffalo game, we have a sign of things turning around. So for now, thank you all so much for tuning into the Winged Wheel podcast. Thank you to our sponsors, Labatt Blue Light, as well as all of our Patreon supporters. We can't be doing this without you. And to all of our listeners, new and old, we appreciate you tuning in, either listening or watching. To our name level sponsors on Patreon, Arjun Shankar, Yves Bartels on behalf of the Sarah Grand Foundation, Aikfer, Samuel Soderholm, Icon, Brad's Lord and Savior, Bradley Cleveland, Glenn Brabham, Croner's Left Knee, Ashley Van Conant, Sea Lion, Keenan O'Donohue, Yanni Burgers, Meals on Wheels, Matthew M. Rice, Admiral Matt S. at the Cheeseback Navy, Carl Brutanen Nanoluski, Carl Provy, Citizen High Five, Clip Clop Nene, Connor Scovey, Craig Kibble, Denny's Gamer Girl, Derek Enstam, DJ Denton, Fear the Goalie. We sure do. New name level supporter. Welcome. God Creatives, Give Blood, Fight Probert. Have you ever drank Bailey's from a shoe? Hockeytown Love, Hockeytown Matt, Hassam Al-Qassem, I Still Don't Like Kane, Jay Gollum, Jacob Turner, Joel Miranda, Jonathan Miller, Kalen Wood, Marcus, Marlon Winchester, Matt Keeler, Matt McKay, Michael Edlund, R.A., Red Feather Desert Dogs, Ryan, 50 Hannah Cap Hannah, Scott Martin, Scree and Lube, That's What I Appreciates About You, Walman's Elite Dancing D, The Seider House Rules, Yzerplan Stan, General Andy Bohan of the Cheesebag Army, Sam Bankson, A.B., Adam Rose, Axels, Sandy Pellica, Bellingham Acid Balls, Brad Simmons, Brian Vasha, Chuck Buffchest, the Tarpless Goon, Commander Ben Barron of the Cheeseback Space Force, Connor Leighton, Corey Prida, Darren Fick, D-Boss Snip Show, Derek James, Frank Stanley, Gene Sullivan, Griffey Boy, Insert Clever Hockey Pun Here, James Pridemore, Johnny Page, new name level supporter, welcome to the Dub Dub Club, Jeremiah Dobo, JM Rhapsody, Jogan Rafferty Fan Club, John Evans Derogatory, John Ingalls, Josh Yelton, Kevin McCracken, Quaz, Les Grossman's Ungodly Firestorm, Linda Hull, Maximilian, Melissa Erickson, Michigan Boy in Avs Country, Ophelia, Red Wing Tar Heel, new name level supporter, Reed, Shahid Syed, Steven, the Hodag, the Mexinadian, the Hat 123, Wings fan in St. Louis, new name level supporter, formerly AA Ron, and your second favorite patron. Thank you all so very much. We'll talk to you next time, hopefully a little less strained.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to check out wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find links to other ways to support the show, such as Patreon, official podcast apparel, and more. And don't forget to follow the show on Twitter at Winged Wheel Pod. And of course, the hosts at Brad Crisco, at Ryan Hanna WWP, and at Hockeytown Evan.